Ladies and gentlemen, imagine this. One day, without a word or a warning, you vanish. No goodbyes, no explanations. You leave behind your life, your loved ones, your responsibilities, and slip into the silence. What happens next? First, consider the ripple effect on relationships. The people you leave behind, family, friends, colleagues, are left to grapple with a void. Questions linger. Where are you? Why did you leave? The uncertainty breeds confusion, frustration, and often a deep sense of loss. Bonds that once felt unshakable are tested, not necessarily by the absence itself, but by the lack of closure. Disappearance becomes a wound that others must learn to heal without your help. Then, there's the shift in perception. In your absence, people begin to reinterpret your presence. They analyze every interaction, searching for clues, questioning what they missed. Some romanticize your memory, while others grow bitter. Suddenly, you're no longer just a person, they turn you into a story, a puzzle, or even a cautionary tale. But let's turn the lens inward. What about you, the one who disappears? The act of stepping away can be both liberating and isolating. It's a journey of internal transformation, where you confront parts of yourself you never had time to meet. Freed from the roles and expectations society imposes, you're left to answer one daunting question. Who am I without all of this? For some, it's a chance for rebirth. For others, it's a descent into loneliness. Finally, imagine you decide to return. The moment of reappearance carries its own weight. The power and consequences of returning are profound. You're met with questions, expectations, and the harsh reality that life went on without you. Some welcome you back with open arms, others greet you with suspicion. The world you left may no longer fit the person you've become, leaving you to rebuild from the ground up. Disappearing might feel like an escape, but it's far from an end. It's a beginning. A choice that reshapes not only your life, but the lives of everyone connected to you. So, before you decide to vanish, ask yourself, what am I seeking? What am I leaving behind? And most importantly, will I be ready for what happens when I choose to reappear? Thank you. The decision to disappear, whether sudden or premeditated, creates a profound impact on the relationships left behind. Human connections are built on patterns of interaction, shared experiences, and an unspoken trust that people will remain present in each other's lives. When someone vanishes without explanation, these foundations are shaken, and the effects ripple through the emotional lives of those left in the wake of their absence. For loved ones, the sudden disappearance of a friend or family member is not merely an absence, it is an emotional event that leaves a vacuum. Questions arise almost immediately. Where are they? Are they safe? Did something catastrophic happen, or was this a deliberate choice? Without answers, these questions persist and compound, creating an agonizing loop of speculation and worry. Those who care about the person are forced to live with uncertainty, and over time this can evolve into feelings of anger, betrayal, or profound sadness. Close relationships thrive on communication, and when one party simply vanishes, the others are left navigating uncharted territory. There's a sense of imbalance, as though something vital has been stolen without warning. This absence disrupts routines, like a missing thread in a tapestry, making the entire structure feel incomplete. A partner who disappears leaves their significant other wondering if they were the cause, or doing if they were the first to be the victim. A parent who walks away leaves a child wrestling with feelings of abandonment. Even friendships can falter as people left behind question their worth and whether the bond they shared was genuine. Disappearance also reshapes how people perceive the person who is gone. In their absence, memories of them become distorted by the lens of emotion. Some may idolize the person, painting them in an overly positive light as a way to cope with the loss. Others might fixate on flaws, creating a narrative that distances themselves emotionally from the pain of the separation. You may not think the same way about me. By the way, the act of disappearing often transforms a person from a real, tangible presence into an idea, a collection of assumptions, hopes, and grievances shaped by those left behind. The pain of a sudden absence isn't limited to the emotional realm. It often manifests physically. Sleepless nights, constant anxiety, and the inability to focus become common experiences for those left wondering about the fate of their loved one. Disappearance sets off a cascade of worry that ripples outward, affecting not only close relationships but extended networks as well. Frequent response. The background chatter now generated by the voice of the usual victim of the gilded ego. Friends, co-workers, and acquaintances might be drawn into the emotional fallout, each affected in different ways by the disruption. It's not just personal relationships that are affected, professional and community ties are also shaken. A colleague's sudden absence can leave teams scrambling to pick up the slack. A neighbor who vanishes might leave a community wondering about their well-being. Even distant connections are not immune. People feel the absence, even if only as a fleeting thought, and wonder what became of the person who left. This ripple effect highlights a fundamental truth about human relationships. We do not exist in isolation. Our presence, our actions, our words, even our silences, affects others. To disappear is to deny others the opportunity to prepare, to understand, or to find closure. It leaves behind not just an absence, but an unfinished chapter in the lives of those who cared. For some, disappearing may feel like the only option, an act of self-preservation, or a way to escape an unbearable situation. However, it's essential to recognize the weight of such a choice. Disappearing doesn't just free the individual from their circumstances, it transfers the emotional burden onto others. Those left behind must carry the weight of unanswered questions and unresolved feelings, often for years. Over time, the impact of disappearance can lead to transformation in relationships. Some bonds are irreparably damaged, while others may grow stronger as people come together to cope with the loss. The absence might inspire some to cherish their remaining connections more deeply, but it can also create barriers to trust, making people hesitant to invest emotionally in others for fear of being hurt again. In the end, the decision to disappear has far-reaching consequences. It is not just an act of personal autonomy. It is a decision that reverberates through every connection and relationship the person has ever formed. While the reasons for disappearing may be valid, the emotional ripples it causes are inevitable. The lives of those left behind are forever altered, shaped by the absence of someone they once thought would always be there. The temptation to seek revenge remains the strongest reason to be vigilant and shape the lives of those left behind. When someone disappears, intentionally or not, the way they are perceived by others undergoes a significant transformation. In their absence, they are no longer present to clarify misunderstandings, provide context, or share their perspectives. This creates a void where speculation, memory, and emotion take over, often reshaping how they are remembered and understood. Indeed, human culture has developed to the point where there are still questions about the past, the future, and the meaning of life. What remains is not necessarily the person they were, but an image constructed from fragments of memory, filtered through the subjective lens of those left behind. People instinctively try to make sense of absence, and in doing so, they begin to reevaluate the role the missing person played in their lives. Was their departure predictable in hindsight? Did they show signs of wanting to leave? These questions compel those affected to revisit past interactions, sometimes scrutinizing every word or gesture for hidden meanings. This process is rarely objective. It is colored by emotions, grief, anger, confusion, or guilt, and often leads to a skewed perception of the person who disappeared. For some, absence romanticizes the missing individual. They are remembered as larger than life, with their positive traits amplified and their flaws minimized or forgotten altogether. This idealization stems from a longing to hold onto something positive in the face of loss. Absence, in this case, becomes a kind of preservation, freezing the missing person in a favorable light, untouched by the complexities and imperfections of real life. Others may take a more critical view. Feelings of betrayal, abandonment, or frustration can cast the missing person in a negative light, reducing their legacy to a series of grievances or perceived failures. In such cases, people may focus on the pain caused by the disappearance rather than the person's prior contributions or character. This shift can be a coping mechanism, a way to distance oneself emotionally and protect against further hurt. The mystery surrounding disappearance adds another layer to the evolving perception. In the absence of concrete answers, people create narratives to fill the gaps. These stories are not necessarily based on fact, but are instead shaped by assumptions, biases, and the need for closure. Was the disappearance an act of selfishness? A cry for help? A response to circumstances no one else could understand? Each person left behind may construct a different story, leading to a fragmented collective memory of the one who is gone. Cultural and societal factors also influence how disappearance is perceived. In some contexts, disappearing may be seen as an act of defiance or courage, a break from a stifling environment or a stand against societal norms. In others, it may be viewed as irresponsible or cowardly, a failure to face life's challenges head-on. These broader narratives can shape how individuals interpret the disappearance, further complicating the personal and emotional responses of those affected. Interestingly, time plays a pivotal role in the perception shift. In the immediate aftermath of a disappearance, emotions are often raw, and perceptions are shaped by the shock of the event. As time passes, however, memories soften and the initial intensity of feelings may fade. People begin to reframe their understanding, sometimes with greater empathy or clarity, though not always. The missing person's absence becomes part of the fabric of others' lives, influencing how they view relationships, loss, and even their own identities. The absence of a person also creates a kind of power dynamic. The missing individual, intentionally or not, becomes a figure of intrigue or speculation. Their absence allows them to be anything to anyone, a hero, a villain, a mystery. They exist only in the minds of others, shaped by personal biases and emotional needs. This can lead to a sense of detachment from their true self, as the person they were is replaced by the person others believe them to be. While the act of disappearing might feel like an escape for the individual, it sets off a chain reaction of reinterpretation for everyone left behind. Each person must grapple with their own understanding of the missing individual, colored by their personal experiences and emotions. In this process, the reality of who the person was is often lost, replaced by a collage of memories, assumptions, and unanswered questions. Most of the rest of the manifestations remain unclear, and many of the questions remain unanswered. In the end, the perception of someone who disappears becomes a reflection of those they leave behind. It reveals not only how they were seen in life, but also the emotional landscapes of those who remain. Absence becomes a mirror, showing people more about themselves than about the one who is gone. This transformation, though shaped by loss, is as much about human connection as it is about the one who disappeared. When a person disappears, whether by choice or circumstance, it often triggers an internal transformation that is as profound as the external effects of their absence. For those who choose to step away from their lives, there is often a sense of liberation that accompanies the act. Disappearing offers a form of escape from the expectations, responsibilities, and pressures that have come to define their existence. It provides an opportunity to shed the roles they have been assigned to their family, their friends, their job, and to step into a new identity, even if only temporarily. The person who disappears is no longer defined by the demands and labels that shaped their previous life. Instead, they become something more fluid, perhaps even unrecognizable to themselves. His speech. This process of self-discovery, however, is not without its challenges. In disappearing, a person often finds themselves confronting their own fears, desires, and insecurities in ways they never anticipated. The moment they sever ties with their previous identity, they are faced with a blank slate, a space that is both freeing and terrifying. Who are they without the roles they have played? Without the relationships that define them? The freedom that initially seems like a gift can quickly turn into a void, a place where the absence of structure and external validation leads to uncertainty and confusion. For some, the experience of disappearing leads to profound self-reflection. With no external distractions or obligations, they are finally forced to reckon with the parts of themselves they may have long ignored or suppressed. Without the expectations of others, they are free to explore their own thoughts, feelings, and desires in a way that might have been impossible in their previous life. This solitude can be a powerful tool for growth. It offers a chance to rethink their values, goals, and relationships. They might question their past choices, assess the direction their life was heading, and if they wish, alter the course entirely. Close quote. Yet, this journey of self-discovery is often fraught with discomfort. The absence of social and emotional connections can be deeply isolating. In choosing to disappear, a person may have expected relief, but they might also encounter loneliness in its rawest form. The relationships they left behind, no matter how burdensome or unsatisfactory, were at least anchors that provided a sense of purpose and belonging. Now, removed from that framework, they are forced to confront a different reality. They are entirely alone, with no one to rely on, no one to give them validation, and no one to help them navigate the challenges of their new existence. The emotional consequences of disappearing are also deeply personal. Even as they distance themselves from the expectations of others, they must come to terms with the emotional toll of leaving behind the people who cared for them. The act of disappearing can feel like an escape from responsibility, but it also comes with the weight of guilt, shame, and unresolved emotions. The person who has disappeared knows that their absence has caused pain, confusion, and perhaps even anger. The relationships they left behind are unfinished, and the connections that once held meaning may now feel fractured and lost. The person who disappeared is left to grapple with the consequences of their actions. And often, these consequences are not easily shaken off. At the same time, the isolation that comes with disappearing can serve as a powerful catalyst for change. The person is no longer able to hide behind the roles they played or the relationships they maintained. They are forced to face themselves in a raw and unfiltered way. For some, this confrontation leads to a sense of clarity and purpose. They emerge from the experience with a better understanding of who they truly are and what they truly want from life. The absence of outside distractions allows them to reconnect with their core values and passions, and they may return to the world with a newfound sense of purpose or direction. However, not all transformations are positive or empowering. The solitude of disappearing can also lead to darker revelations. The absence of external feedback and support can cause a person to spiral inward, losing touch with reality and perhaps even their sense of self. In the absence of relationships to ground them, they may begin to question their worth, their identity, and their place in the world. The freedom that initially seemed so appealing may turn into a prison of their own making as they struggle to find meaning in their new existence. Ultimately, the internal transformation triggered by disappearance is not a straightforward process. It is a complex and multifaceted journey that involves moments of clarity, confusion, empowerment, and vulnerability. For some, disappearing provides the opportunity for growth, self-discovery, and reinvention. For others, it is an exercise in avoidance, a temporary escape from the pressures of life that ultimately leaves them feeling more lost and disconnected. Regardless of the outcome, the internal shift that occurs when a person disappears is profound and deeply personal, and it shapes their future in ways that are often beyond their control or comprehension. When a person decides to reappear after having disappeared, they are not simply returning to the lives they left behind. They are stepping into a transformed world where relationships, perceptions, and personal growth have all shifted in their absence. The act of re-entry is a complex one, filled with both power and consequence. It is a moment that demands reconciliation, and it often tests the resilience of the individual and those around them. For the person who returns, there is a sense of both liberation and trepidation. The act of reappearing may signal a fresh start, a chance to rebuild what was once lost or severed. But it also requires them to confront the emotional and practical consequences of their disappearance. Relationships may no longer be the same. Trust, once a foundational element, may now be fractured. The person who vanished left others in a state of uncertainty, and this lingering absence has shaped how they are perceived. People will not simply welcome them back with open arms. Rather, they will look for signs of remorse, change, and accountability. The weight of the past cannot be ignored. The emotional distance that comes from disappearing leaves scars, and those who were left behind must now navigate the challenge of reintegrating someone who once caused them pain or confusion. In many ways, the person who returns finds themselves in a position of vulnerability, seeking not just to re-enter their former relationships, but to restore them. They may have changed, learned new things about themselves, and evolved during their time away, but they must now prove that their transformation is genuine. Words are no longer enough. They must demonstrate through actions that they are capable of rebuilding trust and contributing meaningfully to the lives of those they left behind. The captain nods. He reaches into his metal bag, pulls out what looks to be a slip knife. The power dynamics at play are significant. The person who returns is no longer in a position of full control. They must navigate the complex emotions and expectations of others who have been affected by their disappearance. Some may be willing to forgive, eager to welcome them back into their lives, but others may be more hesitant or even resentful. The person who disappeared is now faced with the daunting task of proving their worth, not just as a person, but as a member of a community or family. The dynamics of relationships have shifted in their absence, and the person returning must learn how to navigate these new realities. Reason for the spirit must be overruled before it flourishes, and this new spirit must be confronted by the prospect of serious implication. For those who were left behind, the return of someone who disappeared often forces them to confront the emotions they may have buried during the absence. The feelings of hurt, betrayal, and confusion that were once suppressed may resurface. Rebuilding a relationship with someone who has been absent is a delicate process, and it requires time, patience, and open communication. The people affected by the disappearance are now tasked with determining whether they can truly accept the person back into their lives or whether the wound left by the absence is too deep to heal. This can create an emotional tug-of-war. On one hand, there is the desire to reconnect and rebuild, but on the other, there is the fear of being hurt again. Moreover, the world the person who disappeared returns to is no longer the same as the one they left. Time has passed, people have changed, and circumstances have shifted. The returnee must adjust to a new reality, one that has evolved in their absence. Their reintegration is not as simple as stepping back into the roles they once occupied. It is often a process of redefinition. What was once familiar now feels foreign, and the person who returns must navigate this sense of displacement while trying to reestablish their place. This period of adjustment can be difficult, as the returning individual may struggle with a sense of loss and disorientation. They may find that the relationships they once relied on have become more distant or complicated, and that they are no longer able to slip seamlessly back into their former life. On a deeper level, the return can also spark a process of personal growth and reinvention. In the time they were away, the person who disappeared may have undergone significant changes, and returning offers them the opportunity to demonstrate these transformations. They are no longer the person they were before they left. Their time away may have offered them a new perspective on themselves and the world around them. As they return, they are not simply re-entering old relationships. They are doing so as a different person, one who may be more self-aware, more empathetic, and more equipped to handle the challenges they once avoided. But this transformation is not guaranteed to be positive. The return to old relationships and responsibilities may force the person to confront unresolved issues, and the weight of their past actions may hinder their ability to fully reintegrate. They may struggle to live up to the expectations of those who were hurt by their disappearance. The process of re-entry is fraught with obstacles, and the person who returns must be prepared to face both the external challenges of rebuilding relationships and the internal challenges of redefining themselves. In the end, the power and consequences of returning after disappearing are profound. It is not simply a matter of rejoining the world as it was before. It is about navigating the shifting emotional landscapes of relationships, confronting the consequences of one's actions, and proving that personal growth is not only possible but genuine. The person who returns may find new opportunities for connection, but they must also reckon with the past that cannot be easily erased. Returning is a test of resilience, forgiveness, and the willingness to face the complexities of life that have only grown in their absence.